I call the meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome to the March 27th, 2026 Council called special meeting of the Ashland City Council. Because we have a special meeting, we are not having public forum today, but I do want to make sure that everyone who has come today understands how to sign up to speak to the council if that's what your intention is. There are sign-up forms on the back wall. Please fill those out and make sure that you indicate to us which of the two agenda items you have come to speak to the council about, and then you'll put it in the tray right up in front of our city recorder's office desk. Also, just wanted to let everyone know that this was not an initially planned meeting, and so a couple of our staff members who are typically in attendance at these meetings are not here today. So we have Deputy City Manager Jordan Rooklin will be stepping in for Sabrina Cotta because she is not in town, and also Kobe Glick will be stepping in for our recorder who is also on vacation. So that is who you see here. Please make sure your sign-up sheets are in the trays before we begin each agenda item so that we can make sure that we bring you up at the right time and we keep the meeting moving forward. So there are two agenda items on our agenda today. One is an update on City Hall repair requirements, and the second is a discussion on the use of the community center. Just want to note that the council already has a major agenda item planned for the April 7th meeting on the City Hall. So this will be primarily an update today, and then we will move into the conversation about the community center. So, Jordan?
Mayor, would you like to start with land acknowledgement?
Yes, I will read the land acknowledgement for us today. We acknowledge and honor the Aboriginal people on whose ancestral homelands we work, the Ikirakutsum Band of the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We honor the first stewards in the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on, tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geography of the Ashland watershed include the original past, present, and future indigenous inhabitants of the Shasta, Takelma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Quakaka, where the Crow lights that is now the Ashland City Plaza. Jordan. Oh, and also Council Chair Dale is attending by Zoom. Thank you for making the time. I know that you're at an event conference somewhere else, so thank you for squeezing the time in for this. Jordan?
Great. And I believe Pledge of Allegiance is next on our agenda.
Oh, is it? It is.
It is part of our template. Yes.
We haven't done these special called meetings. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. Kobe?
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
He looks frozen.
Yeah. Let me check.
Councilor Dale, you're here? Okay. Yeah, if we can work on this sound so we can hear Councilor Dale. And I'm also here. Okay. Now on to new business. Jordan.
All right. Thank you all. This agenda item is a request to have an update on the City Hall repair recommendations. And so in the agenda packet provided to you all, there is a table that kind of works to summarize the different repairs that have been identified and what classification, staff would identify them under. So the main sources of information for where these repair recommendations came from are from the various reports that have been compiled on City Hall over the years. We are using the most recent information we have, and so that is from a 2024 report by McKinstry that did a facilities assessment on all of our assessments, as well as a commercial code building inspection that was occurred this year, and then finally a 2015 report that was specific to seismic upgrades that were recommended for City Hall. So what this table shows is it shows a breakdown of what the recommendations are across those reports, what the estimate of those costs are from the report itself, and I want to delineate from the report itself and not from an actual contractor that we go out and bid to do the work. And then applying the construction cost index, so inflation in construction, what would those same dollars look like today? So just to orient you all. And so the immediate concerns for recommendations on repairs to City Hall really are specific around the rafter, the cracked rafter that was recently found in the commercial code inspection, repairing significant leaks for the roof, replacing the water heater that is at its end of life cycle, no longer working, fixing just some bare basic electrical, exposed wiring, replacing of the HVAC and pest control. The second section of the table is our primary concerns. These are life safety concerns, but not necessarily ones that need to be addressed before people occupy the building again. And then secondary concerns are those concerns that are not life safety related, but are also not seen to prohibit entry or occupation of the building. And so I'm happy to give any specifics on what these repairs are or where they came from.
Councillor Sherrill?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jordan. Just a couple of questions on some of these costed items on here. Are there, is there the ability that we can tackle some of these in-house? Like, for example, could facilities do pest control, or could some of our licensed electricians potentially do electrical safety?
So we have our city electrician is going in Monday to the building to assess where they are able to do it all in-house. So the answer is yes, we would do everything we can in-house. At this moment in time, I'm not able to let you know what exactly we can do versus what we'd have to contract out.
Thank you.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, thanks, Jordan, for that rundown. So looking at the ZCS report, it talks about, repairing the rafter, then it could be occupied, but it gives specifics in snow events, wind advisories, seismic events, that it shouldn't be occupied. Is the city staff developing a plan for what a repair timeline would look like for that? And then what, moving forward, is it moving back in? Is it, relocating to different places? Like, what is the general overall plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So the city staff have already implemented actions on repairing the roof rafter. So if you look in the staff report, as you guys know, because you have the report, we've had an engineer assess the rafter. We also had our insurance come and assess the rafter as well. They provided their report. And as soon as we received their report, we reached out to get bids on repairing that rafter. We're collecting those bids right now. As soon as our close date, which is April 6th, happens, we'll go ahead and move forward with contracting with someone, and we expect to have the repair completed by May 4th.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of your questions of would we be looking to move staff into City Hall after that rafter repair, as shown in the table, there are other safety issues that I would really want to be able to address before putting staff back in.
Thank you for providing that clarity.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Jordan. Yeah, a couple questions here. I'll just see if I can get them out shortly. I'll just put them all out here and then we can address them as needed. So Councilor Bloom started on it. I do see in the staff report that it says staff has initiated the process of the repair of the rafter. So if you wouldn't mind maybe speaking to what that process is and what the timeline is. And then the second question I have is in the list of the recommendations, just specifically in the immediate concerns where it's noted as life cycle. Is that a life cycle based on time, or is it basically I'm looking at as like time or condition? So you mentioned that the water heater isn't functioning. That would be I would call that on condition. Obviously the roofing probably needs to be, there's some repairs and so forth, but like for the HVAC, is it just up on time relative to a standard life cycle of equipment, or when it says life cycle, is it not functioning?
Yeah, absolutely. So the ones that are under the immediate concerns part of the table, that top, those are ones that are no longer functioning the way they should be. We have other recommended life cycle replacements, but those have been placed in the secondary area since they're still functioning as is, even if they're beyond their quote unquote useful life.
Thank you. And then just
Yeah.
finally, just to understand, I understand those are construction estimates by a inspection report, but we would, if the direction was so chosen by staff or council, we would actually go out and get actual bids for those from a licensed contractor, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then Councilor Dale, you did have a question about timing around the rafter repair. We have initiated getting quotes for that. We already have the drawings needed to tell the contractor exactly what needs to be done. As soon as we receive those quotes, we'll move forward with scheduling repair.
Excellent. Thank you, Jordan.
Councillor Duquesne?
Thank you. Thanks, Jordan. So when I look at the second paragraph under observation, it does say roof joints immediately to each side of the damaged rafter were observed, but they're intact. And it says once the rafter is, the damage is repaired, it should be safe. It might be safe to move back in, or didn't say safe, it says considered. It says, therefore, it is our opinion that once the damaged roof rafter is repaired, the building may be occupied, correct?
Correct. And I'll help you with the interpretation that we have of what it means to allow the building to be occupied. Is right now, no individual is allowed to enter the building without pre-approval by the fire marshal. And so the fire marshal is just the one that makes sure that if someone enters, we know it, so if anything happens, we know to go looking for them. With the rafter repair, we anticipate that requirement to be lifted and allow people to go in and out of the building. There are some questions around what to do in high wind events or in snow events.
Snow events, I saw
And
that.
unfortunately, the fire marshal is also out of town, and so I will have to defer to him when he's back of how he would interpret what he would feel is best and safest according to the engineer's report after the roof repair.
And I believe you mentioned when you were talking to Councilor Dale that, or Bloom, that the repair would be May 4th
We anticipate May 4th, hopefully at the latest.
at the latest?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned before with inflation and things like that, it says $6,000 for the repair of the rafter. With inflation, do you anticipate it would be more? Can we say not to exceed? Or how are we and the citizens abreast of what's going on? Not so much the council, but the people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to share first part of your question, then I'll go to the second.
Okay.
So that 6,000 estimate is a recent estimate. So we don't expect it to go above a $7,500 mark, which is why we went ahead and said, we have that budget available in our facilities fund. Let's make it so we can at least enter and exit this building without needing to go through a, sign-in process. For updates on what City Hall is doing, we recently published an article in the Snake Preview. We have a major project site on our webpage. It's a new link that we've put out there to hopefully make it easier to find not only City Hall updates, but ice rink updates, et cetera, where we continue to put updates on there of where our progress is. I will say for the other recommended activities, anything that we can't do in-house is something that I believe we will bring before council because it will require budget to do. And right now, we don't have any budget identified.
If I may, Deputy City Manager, when I look at this, and thank you so much for that communication, because communication seems to be lost. And it was lost on me because when I saw that City Hall was going to be closed, I didn't read the email in its entirety. So when it came to the community center, I was a little bit taken aback. So what I would like to suggest is moving forward at the top of the meetings, when the mayor does the mayor's announcements, if right after that the city manager could make the city manager report. So then it's not lost on me, and then our community can be aware of it. A lot of people don't go to the site. A lot of people actually zoom in and listen and look at us. So if that could be moved to the top of the meeting, I think that would be very important and it wouldn't be lost. And what you have to say and report is important. I appreciate that.
Great. I appreciate that recommendation. Thank you.
May 4th.
Councillor Kaplan?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Jordan. And I think you've partially answered my question, which had to do with the other items on the list. I think you've said that you're going to assess which ones can be done in-house, which ones can't. You would bring back to council for decisions and allocation of budget. The mayor mentioned that City Hall was on our agenda for the April 7th meeting. Does that include discussion of these items, or is that a completely separate kind of item?
For April 7th, at this point, it'd be, we're not looking to make any budget requests or recommendations. I think it's just as an informational update for where we are on City Hall progress.
Okay, so then my question really then is, what is the timing for really deciding? Because I think, like you've said, the immediate concerns are immediate, things that need to be done. If the water heater is not working, if the HVAC is just not working, it's hard to imagine, being able to use the building. So understanding what the time frame would be for fixing those problems, addressing those problems. Can you give us something about what to expect?
Well, and I apologize that this is the answer and maybe the answer a lot tonight, but the folks with the most knowledge to help provide that timeline are currently out of office. But what I would love to do is when they're back after spring break next week, get with them and put together a timeline on what the process would be to either get new quotes, reassess, and then bring before council any requests to give you a little bit more accurate information, and we can present that at the next city council meeting.
Great, thanks, Jordan.
Councilor Hanson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm bringing up my calendar here to see how long we have to wait exactly until our April 7th meeting. Looks like we have 10 days. So I appreciate the questions, and I don't have a quite clear pathway for the time that we're in now. So we have 10 days. We're in the community center because we need some space. So please, community, give us some grace as we navigate our different options here. And I know this is impacting people in different ways, so we appreciate everybody's allowances here. But what is the interim step between now and fixes and moving out of City Hall, if that's what we choose to do? Do we have another backup plan besides community center?
I do think that's the next agenda item, and so if folks are ready to move, I'm comfortable moving into that staff report.
Okay, I don't want to skip ahead, so we'll wait for that. And so until now, we're talking about some temporary fixes, and then like the HVAC system dates back to before my time at council when we had mold issues and other issues in the building. So these are long-term problems, if you will, that are stacking up and developing and all coming to a head, but nothing new, nothing like, came out of left field. This is all known stuff that's just now piled up on us.
I will share what I believe did come out of left field was the cracked rafter.
Yeah.
Because that was something new that hadn't been seen before.
And that came out right when the snow came.
That was, luckily, it was right before the snow came.
Right.
That we had that code inspection. And so we evacuated staff at that time because snow was expected in particular. But everything else beyond the rafter is something that has already been brought up in other reports.
Okay, and before we move on, nothing else to share on other ideas for the next 10 days or so?
Specific to City Hall or specific to staff location?
City Hall.
City Hall, I think at this point, we are waiting for that rafter repair to finish for folks to be able to go in and out of that building without having to do a sign-in sheet. And at that point, we can then send folks in to get assessments and look at the other things that need repair to get more accurate estimates and
Great.
timelines for addressing those.
Great, we'll talk about the community center here in a second.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Just a moment. So, quick question, Jordan. This is the first time that I'm recalling seeing anything about wind risk. I know we've talked about snow risk. We've certainly talked about seismic risk. This is the first time I've seen wind risk. Is there anything in particular that has shifted? Do we know of anything that has changed in that building, or is it simply a matter of its design and now the engineers are looking at it through the lens of wind as well?
Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that, but I'm happy to ask it of the engineer who did the assessment.
Great, thank you.
Follow up with that.
Councilor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. Really quick, Jordan, Councilor Sherrill asked a great question about inside work. When you bring back the timeline, the process of the timeline on there, can we look at what can be done electronic, what we can do inside, whether it's electric or building something, and so that we can see cost saving and maybe we can even expedite it quicker if it's an inside job? That would be really, really important. And as I look at the immediate concerns and I look at priorities, I think they're probably lined up pretty much as needed. And so I look forward to seeing that process. And one thing I'll say, I really appreciate this recommendation cost estimate, because it really breaks that myth that it took $10 million to fix City Hall. So I appreciate that, and this is actually a great tool.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify, I do believe that $10 million estimate came from when the city was looking at partially demolishing and rebuilding City Hall, along with other things. So that 10 million came with a much bigger list of things.
Well, I like these numbers so much better. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you.
And I would just add, it wasn't quite 10 million, but that's one of it's, following on Councillor Duquesne behind your comment. One of the things I think that there's a bigger conversation here, and that is around what do we intend to do with that building? And what is the long-term structural requirement for that building? And when this came before the council the last time, looking at all of these pieces together, the decision was made to basically take it down to a couple of exterior walls and redo it. We're in the middle of that conversation right now around facilities and who goes where and what is the most effective and efficient way to provide services in this town. So I think we want to be careful not to get ahead of ourselves in terms of looking at this list and assuming that this is our punch list that we have to do to put City Hall back where it was. We may not want it configured the way it was. We may want something different for that building. And I think it makes sense to, of course, carry on with the immediate repairs. We know the rafter has to be replaced, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think we should have that next conversation on the 7th and start to have that deeper conversation just around all of the facilities that we're looking at. But good to hear that the rafter will be handled quickly and that we can move on from there. So we have 4 people who have signed up today to speak with us specifically on the City Hall repair requirement agenda item. What you will do is come up to the speaker, to the microphone here. There is a light signal right on the podium that tells you not how much time you have, but where you're at in your cycle. So the clock will start. You'll have 3 minutes. You will, when you get down to 20 seconds, the light will go from green to yellow. That lets you know that you've got about 20 seconds to wrap it up. And then when you get done, you'll have another one. And actually, I just am remembering that we're doing chimes today because we have somebody else running the electronics today. So we will do the chime. So you'll hear a single chime. You go ahead and give one single chime when you have 20 seconds left, and you'll hear a double chime when there's no time left. Give it a good, a double chime at the end. There you go. Perfect. We are set. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that. And I see that we have a big group of folks who've come out on a Friday afternoon. So one of the things also that we do, we can all see you, and it is important for us to understand what people are feeling when they come to speak to us on a specific issue. So while we do not allow for any noise, any clapping, any cheering, anything like that, we're holding this container so that people can communicate with their council. What you can do is, if you agree with something that somebody says at the podium, you can give us the universal sign language sign for applause. We can see it. It doesn't make any noise. It's not disruptive. There is, however, no appropriate signal if you disagree. So we only if you agree, but that helps us understand. No, yeah, exactly. Thank you. We don't do that. So we're here to make sure that everyone has a respectful way to communicate with their council. We appreciate you helping us hold that container. And with that, I will invite the 4 people who have signed up to speak to us to come forward today. We'll start with Rick Yezi, or Vezi? Vizi. Thank you, Rick. Brian Hawley, Brent Thompson, and Gail Patton. If you like, you can line up alongside the wall, or you can come up when it's your time. If you have any mobility issues and need to request a microphone, just raise your hand when I get to your name, and we will bring a microphone to you. Go ahead.
Okay, Rick Veazey, 446 Walker Avenue in Ashland. I'm hearing impaired, but I'll try really hard to hear you if you try to hear me. This is my 3rd go-around with City Hall. Anybody done 3? First one was in the early 90s. Brian Almquist was going to do his warehouse for bureaucrats out here. Took us about 5 years before we got community development built. Second one was 2016. another attempt to abandon City Hall, and here we are again. I think it was 1884 that John and Mary provided us with the land down there for a town hall and a plaza. And now we're expressing appreciation by trying to pull the rug out from under their heirs and their posterity so that we can have our way with the building and bail on it. That building represents our heritage, who we are as a people. It matters. Most of us, I believe most of us want to look up to you folks. We want to respect you. We want to trust you. That building's a symbol of that. But look how you've treated it. Look how all these administrations have treated it. Do you treat your homes that way? Do you not maintain them? Do you not love them? So that building projects itself beautifully into our plaza. It says, this is who we are. This is what we believe in. This is of, by, and for the people, not the bureaucrats. That's what we're looking for as a people. So I'm looking to trust you folks with our heritage, with the gifts that have been given us. You'll either honor that or you won't. But my guess is that there are a bunch of folks out here that are wanting to break out torches and pitchforks. And I don't want to see that happen. So I want to trust you. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm into other ideas. That presentation that you have on your desk from my 1994 report to the Space Needs Study Committee, which I was a member of, read it. I'm not wedded to that. That adds a third floor to the City Hall and deals with most of the structural issues. I got 53 years in the construction industry.
Oops, sorry.
Nice. Tell me. You would not believe the amount of expertise that you have out here. You know, I'm not talking, I mean, George, you know, you should tap into it. And so what I wonder is, why can't we just kind of vacate the community center, all get together and have a beer and talk about it?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, and please do say your name and the city in which you reside.
Brian Hawley, Ashland, Oregon. I want to start off just by saying I don't want City Hall to be moved. I want you to find a way to fix it there. I don't want to spend $5 million to improve the Hardesty property. And I don't understand where any of these ideas are coming from with the budget crisis that we're facing. But beyond that, my meta point, my larger point is I'm going to ask this question: what is the role of citizens in the city of Ashland? Because citizens have come forward a lot.
Excuse me, Mr. Hawley, hold on just a moment. Pause his time. I will remind everyone here that we are not making noise in this space. If we are going to hear Mr. Hawley and everybody else and give them the respect that they deserve, it means that we are quiet and honor that space. Go ahead, Mr. Hawley.
Yeah, my statement was, what is the role of the citizens in the city of Ashland? For example, I came on March 3rd to talk to you about the Tree of Hope, and citizens had already felt like they had told their city what they wanted to be done in 2006 and then later in 2013. But nobody seemed to remember that, at least those of you who are currently sitting in positions of power. And now we have the City Hall thing coming up. Well, Brian Almquist, a former city administrator, proposed something in the early 90s, as Richard mentioned. And when we had a real newspaper in town, people wrote letters to the editor, and the court of public opinion changed the outcome. They said, no, I guess the people don't want City Hall to be moved somewhere else. And then we had a recent vote. And in the recent vote, the city voters, 60-40, against spending all that money to do the restoration of exotic City Hall restoration. And yet it seems like here we are all again. So if citizens make input to this council or a previous council or the one before that, and then decisions are made, and then citizens now look back and say, wait, we already told you what we wanted, and yet you proceed We have a rally on Saturday that's no kings. I don't want no queen either, by the way. So I just don't understand why it is that somebody that is supposed to have continuity, historical memory about civic affairs for longer than the last 6 months, and can look back for 25 or 30 years like many of these white hairs can, what is the role of citizens? If we come and tell you, and then we say, okay, we heard you, and then an outcome has happened, and then that outcome kind of goes away, it's like history gets revised and forgotten. And that makes it feel that my power as a citizen, which, by the way, you solicit when you want my vote, that my power as a citizen just evaporates. And the same thing with community center. The fact that it's been 7 years means that's a snapshot of how our city doesn't work. It shouldn't have taken 7 years to do that. There was a big freeway back east, Highway 90, and they fixed it in 60 days. It's a big interchange between Pennsylvania and New York. So I'm just, like everybody here, I would like everyone to ask themselves a question. What is the role of a citizen in the city of Ashland? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brent Thompson. I live in Ashland. And I think it's nice to have the name Rooklyn represented at the city, because that makes me think Ashland High School graduate and elementary school student with parents very involved. So I have to make that comment, because I think that's important to have this tradition. So one thing we've always had is the fear of earthquakes for 35 years since they designated an earthquake zone. So in renovating downtown, what one tries to do is take the weight off the unreinforced masonry buildings as best you can, so it gets transferred to something other than the exterior walls. So we are 180 miles away from where the epicenter of the earthquake will be when we have the big one. And that does protect us somewhat. The earthquake we had in something like September 93 in Klamath Falls, I went downtown thinking I was going to find bricks on the sidewalk, but I didn't. And that was nice. So the earthquake is a real threat, but I think we're 180 miles from where the epicenter is likely to be. So, and then the problem right now is a rafter, and I want to make the distinguish between a rafter and a beam. Rafter should be a relatively easy repair other than a whole beam cracking. And so I think that I would favor renting or creating more space. We've made some mistakes in town. One of them was when we built the engineering and community development office, that it was only 1 story. The height inside there is as if it's 2 stories. And the other botched thing with that project was there was no elevator to the Alice Peel walkway. So we have some correcting to do. We've got the black sheep vacant. We've got other things vacant where the city can resourcefully move into. And I think you're struggling with it. You're going to do the right thing, because the sentiment here is to keep government in the core of the city, so everyone involved in government has the same problems that business owners do. So that's my sentiment, and I think you'll follow it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gail Patton, and I live in Ashland. I'll just be very brief and to the point. City Hall is a very important part of downtown, and it needs to stay downtown.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding the City Hall agenda item? Okay. Jordan, let's move on then to the second agenda item, the discussion on the use of the community center.
Absolutely, and I apologize all. I will speak more closely into the microphone. Appreciate the feedback if y'all couldn't hear me in that first one. Great, so this agenda item is based off of a request to discuss the use of the community center. I'll provide a really brief, recent month history of the community center use and let you guys take it from there. So as you all know, the community center is in our downtown core. It has been closed since 2019, and the city went ahead and invested into renovating the community center so that it could be open and used again. Following the February 17th notice of the cracked rafter and the concern around safety, City Hall staff, of which there are 13, were sent to temporarily work remotely while other space was identified. The space that was identified through the city manager's office was the community center. as the location where we could locate all the displaced staff, besides legal department, which have gone into the finance building down by the YMCA. Well, no, it definitely does get louder when I look at you all, pardon me. Staff were moved into the community center, and I apologize, I have to look at my notes. And I'm all out of order. Staff were moved into the community center around March 13th, though it was a staggered stair step of moving in. And so staff were fully present this past week, and that is where we stand today.
Great. So I think what I'd like to do is turn it over to the two counselors who asked for this special meeting. So Counselors Bloom and Duquesne, if you would like to orient us to the conversation.
Yeah, great, thank you. So I'm the one responsible for all of us being here on a Friday at 2 p.m. along with Councilor Duquesne. Thank you for the support on that. So the reason why I thought it was important to call this meeting is, it is understood. I think that we all on council understand that operational decisions are made by the city manager, but it is this council's responsibility to make policy decisions. And my understanding is that we have been making policy decisions about the community center. As it was mentioned earlier, it was closed for 7 years. This council decided that it was time to get that back open. We spent well over $2 million to get those buildings open, $1.72 million for the initial contract, and then we had to do a general fund transfer of an additional $720,000. That was to have those buildings open for the community. Furthermore, the construction contractors came back and said, we think a better option would be to tear it down and build a new building. A lot of folks came out and did not like that idea. They wanted us to save the building. So this council then decided to ask the city manager to start a MAC, a Management Advisory Committee, to look at what that would look like. It involved community members as well. They came up with a plan and council said, yep, let's save the building and let's get this repaired. Once we were working through that process, there was also a conversation with the Parks Commission about what fees would look like for rental. This council then also agreed that's a bit too high and we would like to see those fees lowered, again, with a mind towards the community. So all that said, I certainly understand the situation with City Hall, but I think that it's important, and this is the time for this council to be very clear in what our policy is regarding that space and what its purpose is. And so that's why I asked for this meeting, so that we could have a discussion about what that looks like. And my hope is that we would restrict the use of Pioneer Hall and the community center for community activities, for rentals, for birthdays, for weddings, all of the things that have identified with that building going forward. That's it.
Councilor Duquesne?
Thanks, Councilor Bloom. You took all my thunder. But ditto what he said. And I really appreciate everyone coming out this afternoon. It's a beautiful afternoon and to discuss our community. And around policy, if you saw the packet, there will be no motions or no direction given at this time. However, I want us as a body to come together and look at what that policy is going to look like, because maybe we will make a motion, because that's why we are here. We waited 7 years. And in that 7-year time period, there was once upon a time in a small window when we were hoping the community center could have opened sooner, and it didn't. And I am so grateful to live in a city that has so much engagement by its citizenry to come, to email, to speak up, and to say what they want. And something that was said earlier by one of our constituents is that we solicit the community when we want their vote. And the community put me here and Councilor Bloom here. And so that is one of my big reasons for wanting to be here, because we hear you and we want to do better. However, when I saw something that I read, and I said that earlier, and I'm glad that you consider putting the city manager's report at the top of the meeting, because that way everybody can know what's on first, how we're being communicated to, and what are next steps and what's on the docket as we move forward as a city. when I did realize that after 7 years, no community events had been there, no ceremonies, no memorials, no celebrations. And the first thing that happened was for the city to move into the community center without a grand opening, a ribbon cutting, a tour, or anything. To me, that was not acceptable. So I look forward to the motion that will come forward, and I will support it. Thank you.
So are there questions from any other counselors? Counselor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so on this topic of what are we going to do with City Hall temporarily closed, we're in the community center, there's 13 people in there. We're taking something away from the community by occupying it with staff. I heard an interesting idea to move into another downtown business. Like somebody mentioned here quite astutely, the Black Sheep is open. Clearly there's territory around here that has other opportunities. What are some other ideas that we have in the interim to move out of community center and into maybe one of our buildings especially? But I'm open to all the ideas. I'm curious.
Yeah. I think that the two options are either distribute staff across various buildings, so don't co-locate administration into the same space, or rent a space that is large enough to hold everybody.
Okay.
With the city manager out of town, I would definitely want her input and how she would like to operationalize and use her staff
Right.
to be able to make that determination of which pathway is best.
Right.
If we do move forward with renting a space, that'll come with a potential fiscal cost to it. And so, of course, I would want that to be able to be looked into and estimated as a part of the decision-making process.
Right, that makes sense. But we don't really have a vacant office building. We don't have anything that we could pivot to right now. That's just why we moved to the community center temporarily.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. We do have the building of 2200 Ashland Street. However, that was remodeled with our opioid fund our opioid fund money. And so therefore, the original intent of that building was to help support folks who are either suffering from any impacts related to the opioid crisis. Primarily, we're using it right now for our severe weather shelter, and I know robust discussion is going on with the ad hoc committee to make recommendations on how to use the rest of the site. But in terms of enough office space that's city-owned, 2200 is the only currently empty building with that level of office space.
Okay. Refresh my memory, Jordan, that building that's over by the YMCA that we have staff in right now, is there any additional space in that building that's open?
Currently, they are packed elbow to elbow at the moment, so not at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, Councilor Hanson's questions were forward-looking, and it got to some of the question that I was going to ask, which is just to understand. I received the city manager's alert that there was a problem with a cracked rafter on February 16th. I think on February 17th, or maybe it was the 18th, an email that said that all staff would be taken out of City Hall and put in the community center. So I was aware at that time. I was out of town at the time, so I wasn't really in a position to follow up on that. And there was we were supposed to have a city council business meeting on the 17th that was canceled because of snow. I was planning just to call in because I haven't missed a city council meeting yet. But in any case, we didn't hear any of the options that the city manager, that the administration considered in deciding to put in actually and ultimately landing on the community center building. So could you review for us, you've talked about some of the options going forward, but could you just walk us through the process that was followed to think, well, where should, I guess there are 13 staff, 2 of them are in the finance space, so there are 11 in the city hall. What was the process for deciding that it should be 11 staff moved to the community center?
Yeah, and just a quick clarification, our 3 legal staff are at the finance building.
3 legal, sorry, I'm sorry.
The use of that office space, and then 10 are currently at the community center.
10.
And, I was not part of the direct decision-making team around where staff would be located. Just talking to folks before today's meeting, I do know that what was assessed, because I had talked about it, was if we disperse staff, would we have space for those dispersed staff to go? So we were looking at, right now the Lithia Park cabin has a vacant office since we don't currently have a parks director. The the community development place has a few empty cubicles, and then the Grove has a few empty cubicles as well, and we were looking at could we convert conference rooms into office space. My understanding is that our city manager's main concern is having her core staff distributed across the city, and she was really hoping to co-locate everyone in the same location, which is why she has put the city manager's office and HR into the community center.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I appreciate Councillor Hanson and Councillor Bloom asked the first questions I was going to ask. I understand, Jordan, that you might not be able to speak directly to this, but it sounds to me, well, let me back up a second. I do want to just make a quick note, a statement that I think I certainly understand that it's an operational decision and not a policy decision to direct where staff is. So I just want to make that clear that as I understand it, that's not part of this discussion, nor should it be it's not a policy decision. Relative to where the staff options are, do you see, from your vantage point, I certainly don't expect you to speak for the city manager, but as the deputy city manager, in your opinion, two things. Number one, if it were, if the various office staffs, departments needed to disperse, and I think about dispersing my staff is dispersed across 3 time zones. So I understand it too, that sometimes it's not necessarily the best way to do it, but we can manage temporarily, potentially. What do you see are the worst case scenarios of what would happen operationally by having staff dispersed? And then the second question is if that needs to be done, what would you guess to the best extent, again, timeline for that to happen?
Oh, I feel like I'm on Jeopardy with that question, Councillor Dale.
Yeah,
thinking
Jordan,
through.
it is absolutely okay if you just, if it can't even be a reasonable guess, then don't worry about it. I'll certainly retract that question.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you had any just experiential or anecdotal experience, in your various roles of kind of pros and cons that you might be able to help make us as informed as possible relative to that. And you don't need to go specific or anything that's outside of a right down the middle of the fairway or comfort zone. I wouldn't want to put you on the spot that way, but just figured it would be an opportunity to give us any information that may be needed to help us be as informed as possible.
Great. No, thank you, Councillor Dale. I appreciate that. I am happy to share just my own perspective and experience. Since I work directly in the city manager's office, and in particular, I provide management to both our communications officer and our emergency coordinator. I do find great value in being able to just pop out of my office and quickly work on a press release with our communications director. That part is lovely. Could we still function and do our jobs if we were in separate locations and working via Teams, Zoom, or phone call? Yes, we can adapt. Our role is to hear and to serve our community and serve council's priorities as best we can, no matter where we are. So as a very quick, cheap answer, a lot of benefit for being co-located. The work is doable if we are not co-located. In terms of timeline, my big ask, I did see what it took to get staff into the community center. And I think the biggest challenge is it takes a lot of our IT staff and our facility staff to make a move happen. And so what happens is when they're occupied for a full week, they fall behind on the other things going on. And so if we are to move staff, I would want to do a slower roll in doing that co-location. It really depends on where we're sending people to. I would request a minimum of 6 weeks time so that we can move maybe a different group every 1 to 2 weeks so that we can keep up with the other needs for both IT and facilities at the same time. That being said, we can always adjust our priorities to where council would like to direct us as well.
Thank you, Jordan.
Councillor Sherrill?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Jordan. Just a couple of questions, maybe starting with a little bit of a statement. Like, I do think that there's a responsibility that the city has to try to keep people safe. And we had the collapse at the South Medford gym recently. Thankfully, no one was injured or killed. If we were looking back on this and this building had major issues, management would look, we'd be looking that way with a different tone. With that said, though, I mean, I think the community is pretty clear that, like, you know, sometimes we make mistakes and we have to pivot. A lot of people are expecting different things from this building. If we had to vacate it reasonably, say within a 6 weeks' time, have we thought about or looked at following the current policy we have in place for remote work until we can either identify a new building or get this building to the occupancy where it could be used again, not just entered and exited?
Yes, we have, within our policy, we have the ability to provide, you know, full 40-hour week remote work under certain circumstances, and this could fall under it. There are things that we just want to keep in mind around someone's ability to have reliable internet. Is it set up in an appropriate way for them? There are some more ADA, HR things that we need to assess. Doable to assess those for 10 to 13 employees. Speaking once again for myself, I will say I have a toddler at home, and her daycare is at our home, and so my productivity would take a big hit. You all would likely see me in a lot of coffee shops around town as I try to stay focused on the work.
Follow up, Mayor. Thank you. And again, we're not trying to get in operations, and I know you weren't. It sounds like you weren't in the room when the decisions were being made to where to relocate. But if we have another discussion based on the community coming forward and saying, no, this building is for this, I would just ask that we could consider some buildings that we already have, maybe like Briscoe, and also potentially partnering with SOU where they have lots of available space right now. Do we want to be better together, or do we want to be separate? It would be a good time to at least maybe explore an MOU on some space there, and other buildings that the community brought forward today, I think are worth looking into for sure if there is another discussion.
It's a great recommendation. Thank you.
So we have several folks who have signed up to speak with us about the community center issue. So again, you'll have 3 minutes. We'll follow the same process we followed with the previous agenda item, and you will start in this order. Linda Adams, Corey Frank, Julie Akins, and Brent Thompson.
Linda Adams, and I should have brought my other glasses. I live down Oak Street. I'm speaking to offer my support for the administration's decision to temporarily relocate City Hall staff to the community center. This is a matter of safety. The discovery of a split rafter in the City Hall attic was not a minor maintenance issue. It was a structural red flag. When the fire marshal and building experts indicate that a ceiling is at risk of failure, a city manager has a moral and legal obligation to move employees and the public out of harm's way immediately. We cannot wait for the more convenient time for a structural failure to occur. This is a responsible use of city assets. However, the city recently invested $2.5 million into Pioneer Hall and the community center to make them safe and functional. We must maintain a functional government. For Ashland to tackle the big issues, housing, climate change, and the budget, our core leadership needs to be able to work together efficiently. The city manager has ensured that the business of the people continues without interruption. I want to thank the administration for making a difficult, decisive call under pressure. It is the job of the city manager to manage the daily operations and safety of the workforce so that this council can focus on policy. This move was a tactical necessity, and I urge the council and the community to support this transition so we can eventually move forward to a permanent, safe solution for our city hall and open the community center for the public.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Corey Frank, and I do live here in Ashland. First, I'd like to thank the two counselors who are listening to the community and who are interested in what we have to say. And what I have to say is we worked remotely during COVID. It wasn't ideal, but it worked. Why can't we do that now? The community center, and you're right, there should have been a grand opening. A lot of money was spent. A lot of people are anticipating a grand opening. And here we are, just a takeover, in my opinion. That's what it looked like, just a takeover. There doesn't seem to be an interest in what the community would like, which is to use our community center. Thank you.
Thank you. After Julie Akins and Brent Thompson, we have Gail Patton and Sharon Bryson.
Hello, Julie Akins, resident of Ashland. Thank you for listening to what I have to say. I'll thank you in advance. And I really like the direction this meeting is going and the conversation. It's unfortunate that this conversation could not have been had prior to the community center being taken over by the city manager. It's also additionally unfortunate that she could not attend today so that you could get more direct answers. I appreciate Deputy City Manager for her comments today. I'm going to borrow a page from Thomas Paine here, so don't freak out, it's a little dramatic. Community buildings are not brick and mortar, but narrative. And the narrative being written by the city of Ashland is one which says the people do not own their buildings, and the people are no longer welcome in the buildings they paid for, in the rooms where their memories came to life of a time when they experienced Ashland as their town. What is being written now in the architecture of Ashland is an authoritarian narrative which states all for me and none for you. You will pay for buildings you cannot access and for debt you did not create, and if you refuse, you will be punished. You, mayor and council, are to represent the people, not the corporation, not the assets, the people of flesh and bone to whom you swore an oath. It is your responsibility to rewrite the narrative as such. Open public buildings to the public. Inform the staff that they serve you and serve the people. We come to you now in redress of our community rights. Restore the community center and all public buildings for the use and access and service of the people. Let me say it plainly. The community center belongs to us. Give it back. Thank you.
Hi, Sharon Bryson, Ashland, Oregon. I didn't prepare anything, but I want to repeat, thank you, Dylan and Gina, for having us and listening to us. I think that maybe all of this was necessary, but it felt like a takeover. It felt like there was no communication. I know it happened fast, but when I read the paper that was sent about the different correspondence, Jordan, that you put together, to me this sounds very much like somebody who's bossing me around. And I don't feel like a public servant is supposed to boss citizens around. I think public servants should honor citizens and respect them. And I want the community center back. And I so much appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you. After Brent Thompson and Sharon Bryson, we have Pat Turner and Nancy Boyer.
Hi, I'm Brent Thompson. I live in Ashland, and I can't fault the decision to temporarily move government where it needed to go just to keep things going. But the community center is a vital part of the community, and I've been going there since August 1984, responding to a daily tidings ad saying Ashland folk dancers meet at the community center at 59 Windburn Way, and instruction is at 7:30. Request dancing from 8:30 to 10:30. All are welcome. So that was the beginning of that part of community, and it existed since 1973. And as a folk dancer, we do miss it, and I'm confident it'll be there again after we go through this interlude where the city offices have to take it over temporarily. I can't fault the decision to do what was needed to move temporarily into the building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail Patton, I live in Ashland. I think many of us feel that the city manager overstepped her authority making that decision and felt very left out. And, the community center is ours. And as long as city staff is in there, there's no revenue coming in. And no place for, some of the activities that used it regularly. So if the, the staff need to be in there, I hope it's the minimal amount of time and that something like this doesn't ever happen again. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pat Turner, and I live in Ashland. And I just want to thank Councilor Bloom and Councilor Duquesne for having this forum that we've been left out of. It was a surprise when someone on social media posted that we couldn't go into the community center. There was a sign that said, do not enter, do not disturb the staff. It seems so foreign to the place that I moved to in 1989 to not have communication with the city. I know we don't have a paper, and probably a lot of us get our news from social media, and you may not be on it, but we are. And to my research, the community center was built in the 1920s. It was used as a USO social event place. In the 60s, there was some sort of a stairway to the attic for the park and recreation offices, but it was occupied by the community for social. And in 1985, it was rebuilt to be a community center for us to be entertained, to have meetings. Nancy and I were at that community center the day before some light fixture fell. We never felt unsafe. I don't even know if it was installed properly, but we've spent $2 million to put it back as a community center, and that's what it should be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Boyer, Ashland. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, everybody's taking the thunder, and I would like to repeat everything everybody else has said. I just want to note that there was a lot of emails to staff and administration what was happening with our community center, but only one time, I think on the February 18th, was there a Facebook or Instagram noted that the staff was moving out of City Hall and hopefully, and they were remotely to work at home safely. There was no information or city e-news that I saw, any Facebook, Instagram notice then that our staff and administration was moving into the community center. We had no knowledge, at least I did not. So it was quite a shock to see the signs on the door, and quite frankly, I thought they were just a little harsh, do not disturb. I have a lot of memories from the community center. Maybe our city manager doesn't have those memories like many of us do, but during that time, it would have been really thoughtful to announce a quick open house, maybe throw in some cookies and some more Kool-Aid for us, have a ribbon cutting, some pictures, and then announce that administration was moving in there. We have no idea after waiting 7 years what it even looks like, what we even paid for. We don't know who the people are in there. You just said there were several administrative staff members in there. We don't know who they are. I think we've been left out, and I think it's been a harsh decision just to come in and take it over. One quick thing I wanted to note, you said that if you moved to another place, you would have to rent a space. If you did that and returned the community center for all the work the parks did to rent it, that would be a cost recovery that could pay the rent space. Thanks, Gina and Dylan, for bringing this forth. And we are a community, better together.
Thank you. Any further questions from staff or for staff? Okay. The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the City Council declare the Ashland Community Center and Pioneer Hall are to be reserved for public, civic, recreational, cultural, meeting, and other community-serving uses, and shall not be used for general administrative office occupancy by city staff, except in the event of a declared emergency. I further move that the staff return to council with a resolution reflecting this policy by the May 5th business meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Councillor Bloom.
Yes, thank you, everybody, for your words and kindness. It's about time we get this open in the community. It's been too long, and this is our opportunity to do it. I know some would say this is not a policy question. I would disagree with that. When public buildings are repurposed into general administrative offices from their original purpose, that is a change in public use and is a matter of council policy. Sorry to call everybody here on a Tuesday or Friday at 2 p.m. And also I want to appreciate and thank the Deputy City Manager for your leadership.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I really, really appreciate you coming in. Something that I'd like to make note of, too, is that I believe sometimes we forget, but we all work for the people of Ashland. The staff, the council, we all work for you. I never want to lose sight of that. I appreciate your time coming here today, and this is policy. This is your building. It's a community building. And I'm hoping that as we move forward and we look at this biennium that's coming up, that we can earmark money for infrastructure so that we never find ourselves in this position again. And I do have some thoughts about that, but I'll share it at another date. But thank you so much, and I do support this motion, and I look forward to moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start by saying that I appreciate the discussion. I wish I could have been there because it's a very important one to have. I think this discussion has manifested itself as a microcosm of a larger discussion that we need to have, and that's a good thing. It's long overdue. I think this discussion moves us at a higher level to a better place and better discussion relative to what is policy and what is operational. And while certainly this building, along with everyone that is community owned, belongs to the citizens of Ashland, I do want to point out that I understand when decisions are made. Could we have communicated better? Sure, all of us could have. I want to make sure that it's called out that there are 13 people in that building that are doing the best they can behind the scenes too. And credit is due and deserved there as well as for all of our employees. So I want to make sure that is duly called out, and I don't think that there's the 7 of us out there that feel any different, even though sometimes we have very difficult discussions. But I just want that to be known and to be public and to be said. A lot of folks, rightfully so, have used the word our community, our city hall, our. And that is absolutely true. It belongs to all of us. It's also our collective funds and our collective revenue that goes toward renovating and upkeeping. Someone asked earlier, would you treat your home like that in public forum? And speaking for, I think most of us, no, we wouldn't. And the tragedy of a commons is a thing, and kicking the can down the road is a thing. And we need to look long and hard of 40 years of disrepair here, probably longer. And that means that this community, all of us, our community, all 21,000 of us, are going to have very difficult discussions relative to limited revenue. Now, is it incumbent upon city leadership and this council to be as efficient and responsible as possible? Absolutely. Do I think some of those figures are out of line and need to be looked at in those? Sure. Councilor Sherrill can probably speak to it more than I can. That's our responsibility to make sure that we are being as responsible as possible. But that does not mean that they can be ignored. So I just want to tee this up, that I appreciate this. I support the motion. But I think it's a broader discussion that we will continue to have, that I hope this council will have relative to policy, directives, objectives, deliverables, and timelines, and understanding operational guidelines and commitments from staff. So thank you to staff, thank you to this community, thank you to the council for taking this up, and I'm happy to support this.
Councilor go ahead.
Well, I just wanted clarity on the second motion before we do a vote.
Okay, we'll get to that. Councilor Kaplan?
Thanks, Mayor. And thanks Dylan, Councilor Bloom, and Councilor Duquesne for bringing this. Obviously, we can't have conversations among multiple council members, so it takes two council members to bring a motion to call for a special meeting, and the two councilors did it. Four would be a quorum. It would be inappropriate. Six would be even less. I think this has been a really good and thoughtful and robust discussion. I think we are, as several people have said before, at the edge of operations versus policy. 7 years ago, the city moved, or 6 years ago, the city moved to a city manager form of government to give the city manager authority to really run the city, execute the city council's policy directives. And I think we're continuing we have a strong city manager who takes that ball and carries it forward, makes the difficult decisions, as some people in the audience said. And I think this was an operational decision. There was no council policy direction saying that this building, the community center, was only to be used for the public, and was not an option that the city manager could consider. So this motion would take this building, these two buildings, off the table for that option in the future. And I appreciate the way the motion was articulated. I think another lesson the feedback that we heard here today is the lack of communications. While I was certainly aware, as I said earlier in my statement, of what was happening back in February 17th or February 18th, when we got the first emails, as the packet shows, it wasn't broadly broadcast to the community what was going on. And I think that's so often what happens when our staff are trying to get something done quickly, move it, maybe not paying enough attention to really making sure that everybody knows about it. So I think that's a lesson learned for the future, and I hope that we're able to shore up our strategic communications, our crisis communication. This is a crisis communication event, really, more than anything else. And then I think the other thing that people have talked about is the neglect of City Hall. I think also just the approach that we've taken to rebuild the community center and Pioneer Hall using operational, current budget in the general fund for a major capital expenditure. I hear people talking from time to time about structural deficits. Well, when a structural deficit occurs as well when you're using operating money to fund major capital expenditures. It's like using your savings account to buy your house rather than taking a much more appropriate form to do that. So I think there are many lessons here. I appreciate that we had the opportunity to spend this lovely Friday in this great room. I fortunately got a bike ride in coming over here from my house, as I always do, and I'll be supporting the motion. Thanks.
Councillor Shrell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to speak briefly to the community again, and maybe piggyback a little bit on what Councillor Dale said, that the ever-increasing cost to get anything done, and it's not, nobody's at loss up here to realize that we don't have a facilities fund, and we haven't done the best job as a city over time managing our CapEx. And I would agree that we would take better care of our own assets at home than we do as a community, but that's going to cost money. And there's a market rate today for labor. There's a market rate for any project. Anybody in here that's worked on their house or worked on machinery or that's worked on a system knows that it takes longer and costs more. There's a ripple effect. And a few months ago, I used the wrong choice of words when we were talking about where City Hall is. And I said most people don't give a damn. They just want their utilities to work. They want their water to come out. They want their lights to turn on when they hit a switch. And I was wrong. You know, I think what I've learned is that people really do want a community center downtown. And when I look back at how we voted as a community for capital expenditures to rebuild buildings, a majority of the voting population didn't even vote on it, let alone support it. So I'm going to support this today. I think the community has spoken really clearly today, and I hear that and I see that. And I just hope that we're just as enthusiastic and we show up in bunches just as much when it comes time to ask you to help us repair these buildings that we love, that are the fabric of our community, that we have all these amazing memories in, that we want to be downtown. And I just hope we're as excited when we have to reach into the checkbook to make the really expensive repairs that we know that we're going to have to, with limited income as we have a harder and harder time paying our own bills. And I can say that personally, like myself even. So it doesn't come lightly to hear everybody's opinions. So thanks, and I will be supporting this.
Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that the community hall is a vital part of our community and that there are many that want in there right now. And I also appreciate that we had a safety issue with our city hall and that we had to pivot, and that given the resources at hand, this was the choice of city manager. Bigger picture, yes, we need to figure out what we're doing with our facilities. What's our campus going to look like? Is it going to be dispersed like we have now? Are we going to take advantage of one of the properties coming up, like in the railroad property that's getting cleaned up, or on the south side of town? You know, there's opportunity here for us to consolidate, to do something different, but we have to think, you know, medium and long term, right? We're trying to get a fund together to be able to handle our facilities, and this council is still not passing resolutions to increase reasonable rates and do things that we need to do as a community to shore up our finances. So, you know, we're trying to flip a big paradigm here, lower our costs, get some increased revenue, figure out what our savings plan is for our buildings, and then invest in new things. I believe in the direction that we're going here. I don't think that this is special meeting material. I'm happy to spend my Friday with you all, but I feel like this is an operational decision, and I'm glad that we're here talking about it. I'm glad that we're all putting this all out on the table. We did spend $2.5 million on the new community building in Pioneer Hall. I voted for a new building. I didn't have the same historical tie to the building, although my kids ran around in there as toddlers and preschoolers and kindergartners. I have memories too. I just wanted to invest my $2.5 million in all new facility. You know, tomato, tomato. Our community is smart and we have diverging opinions and we come together and we vote. I'm happy to support all the money that we put in that community building. I'm just saying we're going to come across things differently with different points of view, and that's why I come here happily on a Friday for a special meeting that I know costs thousands of dollars to have, even though I don't really think it's necessary and urgent. But I pose this question to our citizens: why does it take so long to get things done? 7 years for the community center in Pioneer Hall, lots of meetings, lots of opinions, lots of gridlock. We're going to have to give up on things. We're going to have to support things that are reasonable, that aren't our opinions. We're going to have to support good fiscal policy, and we're going to have to move in a direction that gets us out of gridlock. And, you know, I look forward to serving and participating in the future on more projects, but this is just going to be coming up more and more. So let's vote for good financial policy so we have a nest egg, and let's get everybody to the table and make a good plan and not just one or two offs for special interests. Let's get everybody on board to come together for a real sustainable plan in the future. You know, taking over the community center was not communicated well. Probably there were other options that could have been pursued, but I get it. We had to do something. So again, please give us allowances and grace for what's happened. Let us move forward with a good plan. And this is going to take some time, but let's keep on it. So no, I won't be supporting this, but thank you for bringing us here and to talk about it.
So I think that there's a couple of things that have happened in the 7 years that we've been trying to get back into that building. And that one of those things is a clear indication from this community about what that building means. Many people spoke today about the memories they have from that space. And that's real, and that is part of the fabric that holds us together as a community. And it's important. I think we need to be careful when we characterize certain things as that some people are working for the people and other people are in some way not. Reasonable people can disagree about what is the most important thing when you're faced with a building the day before a snowstorm that suddenly you've been told can't hold your people. And this is on us. This is on the community. As we know, we have decades of conversations about City Hall. We've been kicking that can down the road, and the can is starting to disintegrate. So we have to make a decision. And I think, you know, my counselors here around the dais, we've set that in motion so that the community, through a major engagement process, we can decide together what happens with those buildings. In the meantime, I think we have to be understanding of the fact that there are going to be circumstances that come up because we have let it get to the point where it has gotten. And to have some grace to understand certain things, like the fact that this was always intended to be a temporary move. With our conversation at the next meeting around City Hall, if that looks like that's stretching out on a longer time period, of course, then that conversation of, is the community center really the right place to have them if we're not looking at now until May? You know, all of those things are things that we can handle in the overall course of this work. It is critically important that community members like yourselves continue to come and talk to us, send your messages, come to these meetings, help us understand what is important, and also understand that everything is on the move right now. All of our community partners and the city itself, we're all reinventing ourselves right now. So let's give each other a little bit of space, a little bit of understanding. Try to listen to understand as much as we possibly can so that we can move through these next steps together. One of the things I want to be careful about is understanding that in this moment in time with these two buildings, this question of a policy is really the first time we've come up with this concept since we changed our form of government, right? This is the first time we've come into some sort of a question of a conflict between a potential operational use of a building and a community use of a building. So rather than thinking about this as specifically about this one particular decision that has been made by our city manager, I think we should think about it as what is the important policy and the information that should be conveyed through policy to our staff so that when they are presented with a circumstance like this again, potentially in the future, they have a clear understanding of the highest and best use that this community sees for those buildings. And so I think it's an appropriate policy conversation. I also think it could have happened at the next council meeting, but we are here, and I think it is appropriate for us to consider making sure that we are clear as a community about what we want to have happen in those particular buildings so that staff has that guidance in these kinds of circumstances. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Well,
And
Oh, you
clarity-
needed to confirm the second part.
Yeah, I
Did
just-
you have a question for Counselor Bloom?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I heard correctly that the second part of the motion was that staff return with a plan by May 5th.
No, just a
No.
resolution, just to formally adopt the policy that we're about to vote on, to just formalize it in a resolution. And the reason I picked the date I did was to be responsive to your point about 6 weeks. That should give 7, 8. So there's some breathing room to figure things out. I'm not trying to, cause disruption for you. So it gives plenty of time to get that sorted.
Thank you. And do you mind just repeating the motion a little slower?
Absolutely. I move that the City Council declare the Ashland Community Center and Pioneer Hall are to be reserved for public, civic, recreational, cultural, meeting, and other community-serving uses, and shall not be used for general administrative office occupancy by city staff except in the event of a declared emergency. I further move that staff return to council with a resolution reflecting this policy by the May 5th business meeting.
Second.
Any other questions, Carmel?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
I don't vote unless it's a tie, but thank you. All right. Well, thank you all again for coming out. I just also want to say thank you for holding the space. People come to talk to us when something is big on their heart and on their mind, and I know emotions can run high, and I just appreciate you all doing what you needed to do to make sure that you all had a place to talk with us respectfully. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.